Okay, so once again, welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure, much gratitude that I'm welcoming Cameron. He's going to share for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for Q&A. So with that, it's over to you, Cameron.
Wow, that was a short preamble to the meeting. I love it. Get right into it. So I'm the Halloween speaker. I've had people accuse me of being scary in the rooms. I remember I used to do a midnight group here in Toronto called the Midnight Madness Group. And, you know, when people say, oh, Cameron, you say things that would scare the newcomer away, I always like to share this story. It was a woman that I had known in the program. She was a relapsing crack smoker. And she showed up at our meeting. It was about around midnight. She walks in, she sits down at the table and she goes, look what happened to me. And she opens up her blouse. And she had 75 stitches and staples from ear to ear and right across her chest. And my jaw just hit the table. I said, what happened to you? She said, I was in the crack house last week. A guy wanted the resin out of my pipe. I told him to piss off. And he pulled out a knife and he cut my throat from ear to ear and gutted me like a fish. He's in jail on attempted murder. I'm out. And you know what, Cameron? I want to go back to the crack house tonight. Now, there's nothing I can say in these rooms that's going to frighten this woman. My name's Cameron. I'm a member of Cocaine Anonymous. It's a pleasure to be here, pleasure to carry the message. It's always a privilege to do so because it lets me focus on my program, be more cognizant of where I'm at, and draws me closer to the divine that I seek. And that lets me take out the insurance against my slips, allows me to connect to a power that lets me easily control my desire to drink or use. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. For those of you that are in England, I'm apparently going to be in Blackpool this weekend, airlines willing, speaking at the CA UK 29th annual convention. Looking forward to that. It's been a while since I've been to Blackpool, and I'm looking forward to that experience. So if you're in the hood, come on out and visit with us. Should be a fun time. So I'm going to share a tool with you today. Now, I use this. I've been doing this share recently. I've done so many of my other share, you know, as a speaker, it becomes kind of, you know, like, God, when are they going to get sick of hearing me? So I've thought of different ways to present the message and, you know, how to be helpful in the program. So this tool I'm going to share with you today is useful for the sponsor. Those of you who are sponsoring others will find it useful. And those of you that have been around the rooms but can't seem to bake that recovery cake somehow, some way you keep succumbing to the desire and relapsing, it's going to be useful for you also. And it's a presentation, a share on chronic relapsing. But just before I get into that, I just want to qualify, just so, you know, I didn't, you know, drop in here because I'm lonely and needed some people to chat with. I do qualify, unfortunately. You know, our stories are supposed to be what we were like, what happened, what we're like today. And, you know, that's an important distinction. Our stories disclose what we were like. So often I hear what it was like, but that's not really what our story is supposed to convey. It's what we were like, and then what happened and what we're like today. Because ultimately, we're all trying to identify and connect with one another where we realize, hey, I'm like you, you're like me, but you don't do it anymore. And God, I want what you got. And we can take that prospect on that amazing journey and introduce them to the divine. You know what? You know what we really are as sponsors? We're spiritual pimps. All I do is go dickweed, God, dickweed. That's all I do. I just broker this spiritual relationship and allow that dynamic to allow the newcomer to find a power which lets them easily control their desire to drink, use, or act out, depending on what your affliction might be. So what was I like? You know, I love drinking. I love drinking more than anything else. You know, I like drinking. I like using cocaine. I was an intravenous cocaine user. I've done also, I like pills. Opiates weren't my favorite. I wasn't really into the opiates. I'd do them if they were there, but I like the, alcoholics and opiate addicts. They're very similar. They turn the volume down. They want to bliss out or black out. I like Coke. I like speed. I like being ramped up to maximum overdrive. So I tend to gravitate to those types of substances, and I love them. I love them more than anything else on this planet. Untreated, I love it more than every job I was fired from. I love it more than my children. I was a needle user. As I said, I'd leave dirty needles laying around the house. I used to share needles back in the day. It was awful. Finding my kids playing with my dirty fits. And I knew it was wrong, but it didn't have the power to sober me up. There wasn't the necessary power there. Same thing with my marriage. I love my wife. My wife and I have been together a long time. And, it was pretty horrific when I was untreated, and she'd, offer those frothy emotional pills, threaten me with divorce. But I love the effect of alcohol and drugs more than my own marriage. And then in the year 2000, I love the effect of drugs and alcohol in my life. It's been my power for 26 years, from the age of 20 to the age of 46, when I finally sobered up, to be altered. And I'm willing to risk my life for it. Like the story with the young woman that came into the room wanting to smoke crack after a horrific situation a week before. I'm willing to risk my life. Y'all think about, when you are in your cups, what you're willing to risk when we're out there seeking that altered experience we so desperately want, because I love the effect produced by alcohol and drugs. And I was diagnosed with liver disease, and my doctor said, unless I stop drinking, I'm going to die. Oddly enough, of all the substances I've done, it was the bourbon, which brings out my inner asshole. It was the bourbon that brought me to my knees. In fact, out of all the people I've buried, and I've buried 44 to date, out of the 44, there have been 26 overdoses, 8 deaths due to health problems that were created by their drug or their drinking, 9 suicides, and two murders. And but it was alcohol. I bury more people to alcohol death than any other drug out there. And he said, unless you stop drinking, Cameron, you're going to die because you got liver disease. Your liver's distended. Your enzymes are through the roof. And, the first thought that crossed my mind was, man, I need a drink right now. That's awful news, right? And drank for 3 more years on that news. And that makes no sense to our friends out there who do not suffer our particular illness. They're baffled by it. My wife was baffled by it. And, our big book talks about that mental blank spot, that strange phenomenon that parallels our sound reasoning. It fails to hold us in check. My favorite, I like to define it as the liar. I got the liar that lives in my head. The liar loves the effect created by drugs and alcohol, and it does not want to give it up. So, it's built this institute of my brain called Bullshit Inc., where it researches ideas and reasons and excuses why I should drink again, why I should pick up again. And here's the problem. Like the dog that returns to its own vomit. This is out of the book of Proverbs, Solomon's wisdom. A fool in his folly is like a dog that continuously returns to its own vomit. Well, as an alcoholic addict, I'm like a dog that continuously returns to my own vomit. I know it's going to make me sick, but what do? I eat it, just like the dog. It throws it up, it eats its vomit only to throw it up again. Those of you that have dogs know what I'm talking about. And it's baffling why I do this, but the reason is the liar. The liar always won the argument. You all relate to the liar that lives in her head trying to think, hey, it's been 20 years since I had a drink or a drug. Am I really? My wife will say, are you really an alcoholic? Because I know the difference between an alcoholic and an addict and the real ones, versus sometimes I meet people in the rooms, they come to it like we're a social club, like we're the Rotary Club, right? And I don't know why they're hanging out. I don't want anybody wants to hang out in the rooms of 12 steps. But when someone says to me, like I remember I was in a young person's meeting, I was kind of an asshole in those days, and I was sitting beside this woman who had all her teeth. Most of the women I work with don't have teeth. They're really been beaten up by the addiction. I remember saying to this young woman, I said, hey, just because you got passed out, you passed out at a party, and somebody did things to you that you didn't want, doesn't make you an alcoholic. And she got really upset and really angry. And it was like I was questioning her membership in the Rotary Club. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict when I say I am. Well, you might be, you might not be. I really don't know. But I know when someone says to me, hey, Cameron, are you really an alcoholic? Are you really an addict? Because bottoms vary. And some people I'm a high bottom and other people I'm a low bottom. My brain starts going, yeah, really? Are you really an alcoholic, Cameron? Are you really an addict? Maybe we should go to the pub and have a bourbon and find out. That's the way my brain thinks. I've got no defense against that kind of thinking, which is part of the step one problem. And, untreated, I don't know about you, but I'm always restless. I'm irritable. I'm discontented. I'm bored. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm awkward. I don't fit in. I don't like who I am untreated. But when I discovered alcohol and drugs, all of a sudden I liked this Cameron, because drinking and using is not my problem. It's my solution. Running out is a problem. And in the beginning, it seemed like the answer. Remember when we first started drinking and using, and that wonderful warm hug we got? Yeah, this is the way I want to be. And it seemed like the answer. But, this illness has a way of progressing if you've got it. And in the beginning, it was all fun. In the middle, it was fun with problems. And in the end, it was awful. It was horrific. I wanted to stop, and I couldn't stop. I kept succumbing to the desire again and again and again. And the pattern started to change. What used to be, I, go out to the night and, have a few drinks and, and some, shots or hits with my friends, turned into something else. Once I start, I really can't predict how long it's going to last. It could go on for a night, could go on for the next day, a week, a month, a year, or longer. I have no idea how long it's going to last once I start now. And then at some point I emerge full of horror and remorse and hopelessness, and I make a firm resolution I don't want to do it again. And I believe it with all my heart. You could hook up a lie detector test. It would register as truthful. And I believe it's truthful for any one of us when we come off that spree. But what happens? I make a firm resolution not to do it. And then I'm told, go to a meeting. So I go to a meeting. Unfortunately, I go to one of those meetings. I call them open, disgusting meetings where there's no solution. It's just problem, 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 problem. You ever been to one of those, like an Oprah wine fest, group therapy without a therapist, right? They're awful meetings. By the end of the meeting, there's no hope, no faith, no courage. I'm a psychological casualty of this meeting, and now I need a meeting to fix the meeting I was supposed to get all that at. You ever been to one of those meetings? Oh my God, I don't know. I don't know why they're still practiced. I see less of them, though, in Cocaine Anonymous, which is why I really love the fellowship of Cocaine Anonymous. I sometimes say from the podium, although it gets me in trouble, AA is a retirement home for grumpy old men, NA is the fucking insane asylum, and CA is the emergency ward. We're serious about our recovery. We got the solution. Come on in. Because we all like to work our program quickly, get that divine hit of the God dope, and start being helpful to others and rebuild our families and our careers and so forth. I mentioned that there were 9 suicides out of the 44 people that I've buried as a result of trying to work with them. Some people do not succumb to the desire. They sit in these meetings and there's no solution. And they start getting restless and irritable and discontented. And the liar comes out of remission and says, hey, we need a drink or a drug. And they usually relapse as a result. But some don't. Some sit there in what I call sobriety. And they literally go insane in their sobriety. They go nuts, and they end up taking their own lives. They commit suicide. Out of 9 suicides, 9 hung themselves. 1 jumped off a viaduct into traffic, but the other 8 were by hanging. And the suicide rates in 12 steps, an untreated addict is 80 times more likely to commit suicide in the first 5 years of sobriety. 80 times higher than normal society. Now, that's a heck of a statistic. That's in the Oxford Handbook to Psychiatry, and it's a real problem. Some of you may have known some people that have committed suicide. They couldn't live with it. They didn't know how to live without it, and they went crazy. And our program is about how do we live without our solution? How do we live without booze or drugs in our life? And this is the real magic of our solution. But unfortunately, step one's a horror show. It's the realization, oh my God, I'm going to die. There's anything secular or human that's going to stop this train wreck from happening. I will drink. I will use again. And for me to do that is to die. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop me. That's a horrific conclusion to come to. Yet I come into the rooms of CA and I meet people who don't do it anymore. I'm an alcoholic addict who doesn't drink or use. And I haven't done so in 20 years. That's a paradox, because I drank from the age of 20 to the age of 46, morning, noon, and night, to not having any drinks or drugs at all in my life. And I'm around them all the time. Some people say avoid people, places, and things. Well, I'm around newcomers all the time that are actively using, right? Yet I have no desire. And that's the magic. I met someone who was armed with the facts about themselves, a common solution, which is our big book of AA, and a generosity of spirit. And they showed me a way out of that inescapable hole. And because of this program, I was able to apply the tenets to my marriage. My wife and I are celebrating 33 years of marriage. She's my best friend, my business partner, my confidence, my soulmate. We really get along well, especially when I'm not home. She goes, I can't wait for you to go to Blackpool. I'm calling in the housekeeper to clean the house, and I'm going to enjoy 5 days of no mess. I tend to be messy, but we have a good relationship. My children, I was violent. I was always angry as a drunk and an addict. And my daughter's 37, my son's 39. And to be sober and close to them, I have a great relationship with my daughter. My son is 39 with a 12-year-old who's going on 13, nonverbal autistic boy. So if I can be sober and be part of his life with those challenges, it's a gift that CA gives to me day in and day out. My liver went back to normal after 6 years. I went back to university in my 50s. I'm 66 now. Oh my God, how did everyone get younger than me? There was a time when everybody was older than me. Now everybody's younger than me. But I went back to university in my 50s because there's a line in the big book that says, go out and see what other religious people are doing. So I thought, heck, I'll go get a degree. Typical addict response. So I graduated in 2016 in medical anthropology and religion. Medical anthropology is the study of humans and their healing system, of which 12 steps is an alternative healing system. And religions, and graduated at the top of my class. And since then, I've been involved in CA at all levels. I've started groups, done all the positions at the group level, done most of the positions at the area level, served on 9 local conventions. I've been a delegate. I'm currently the online service area delegate. I just rotated out of being the World Archive Chair, although I'm the Secretary to World Archives. I'm the Southern Ontario Archivist and the Archive Chair for Online Service Area. I love archives. I love the history of CA. If there's anyone out there that's interested in archival work in CA, I'm looking for people in the UK. UK is really growing fast, and there's not a lot of people there that are serving in the archival committee position. So I'm always on the lookout to mentor someone to preserve our history so our legacy and our future is secured. So, and with CA, it's taken me around the world. I've been to Sweden, Spain, England, United States, Canada. It's just a gift that keeps giving to me. All because God gave me a big mouth. Go figure. The promise in step 9 was no matter how far down we've gone in the scale of our addiction, we're going to find out how we can be useful to others, to be of maximum service to God and our fellows, and to have that purpose in my life and to apply that approach to my life. That's better than any drug I've done. So a lot of you might know I do a workshop where I do 12 steps in 4 hours. We just did this one past Sunday. It was our Halloween special. I was Carl Jung himself. I really believed I was Carl Jung for those 4 hours. And we had a great time. We just surpassed 10,500 participants in that workshop since May of 2007. And our mantra for that meeting is it only takes a day to learn it and the rest of your life to practice it. That 12 steps is not rocket science. It's a very simple spiritual moral approach to the efficacy of addiction. And it can be taught in a few short hours. If you know your history of AA, they all taught the program to the newcomer very quickly in a few short hours or a few short days. So, and we know it works because over the last 80 some years, we've seen literally millions of people achieve recovery from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So why is it that we see people relapse? Why is it there's some people that can't seem to bake the cake? Now, some people say, there are some people constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There's certainly that group, but there's another reason why people tend to go out. And so this share that I'm going to give to you right now is kind of a synopsis of all the relapse stories I've heard over 20 years. And then at the end of it, I'm going to conclude it with some diagnosing questions that are posed in our big book, and some reflective questions as to where in our program, if it only takes a day to learn it or a few hours to learn it, where in my program am I half measuring things? Where am I falling short of maintaining my connection to a power, a great reality deep down within me that lets me easily control my desire to drink, use, or act out? And if you like this approach, I'll post the link in the chat at the end of the share. And if you like it, you can read the article and use these questions. People I've taken through the steps who have relapsed say, will you take me through the steps again? I go, no, I'm not taking you through the steps again. Let's figure out where in your 12-step program you're falling short. That's a much more useful endeavor. So that's kind of the approach I take. This approach is very useful for the sponsor and those of you that are suffering or are relapsing. Why is it? Because it's baffling. These questions that I'm going to pose, I think, will probably prove helpful and useful. So, as I said, it only takes a few hours to learn how it works and the rest of our lives to practice it. Now, I got sober by working the 12 steps of Cocaine Anonymous, and that was a miracle in my life because for years, the only thing on my mind, morning, noon, and night was how do I get high and how do I get higher? And the desire to drink and use drugs was gone as a result of my involvement with Cocaine Anonymous and the 12 steps. Life was great. Family relationships improved. I started working again. I was able to save a little money. And then I went on cruise control. I got cocky. I got complacent. And my program began to waver. The first principle I let go of was unselfish work with other addicts. This is our 12th step. Intensive work with other addicts was too strenuous for me. I was too busy to carry the message to other suffering addicts. So I stopped working with newcomers and having fellowship with other recovered addicts. Next to go was step 11. I stopped listening to God through meditation, and I eventually also stopped talking to God through prayer, and my conscious contact with God diminished. And what used to be an intuitive direction now became muddled confusion. Next, step 10 ceased to be part of my daily routine. I got bogged down with the minutia of daily life. I stopped watching for selfishness and dishonesty and resentment and fear. I stopped asking God for guidance. I stopped discussing my shortcomings with others. I didn't bother to clean up my mistakes or make amends for my wrongdoings, nor did I turn my thoughts to someone I could help. And when I quit working my daily program of action, my spiritual fitness began to wane. I no longer wanted to clean up my past and set matters right. I discarded my step 8 list of people I'd harmed and ceased to make any further direct amends as suggested in step 9. And then guilt, shame, and remorse over the things I had done began to creep back into my thought life, disturbing my peace of mind and my serenity. Step 7 then ceased to be part of my evening prayer meditation. I no longer asked God to remove my character defects, nor did I ask God to give me strength to be honest, pure, and unselfish and loving. With that, I ceased doing step 6. I failed to see the futility and the fatality of my character defects and their terrible destructiveness, and my shortcomings were no longer objectionable, and I became unwilling to let them go. Next to go was step 4 and 5. I no longer confessed my shortcomings with others because I stopped taking a fearless and moral inventory of myself. Resentments, fears, and harms to others began to pile up, and I once again became blocked from the sunlight of the Spirit. Now I no longer wanted to turn my will and my life over to God as suggested in step 3. I had better ideas. 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity drove me to selfishness and self-centered behaviors. And I gave up searching for the great reality deep down within me. And I became unwilling to believe in a power greater than myself. And I lost my faith in step 2. And once again, lack of power became my dilemma. Having no power, I had no defense against my addiction. My sound reasoning failed to hold me in check. The insane idea won out. And all had gone well for a time, and relapse was unthinkable, but I failed to enlarge my spiritual life, and to my consternation, I found myself drunk and high in a very short period of time. Once again, I was at step 1. I was powerless over cocaine and all other mind-altering substances, and my life had become unmanageable. Now, I've heard this story many times over the years working with others. The question is what can the relapser do about it? Now, I got good news and bad news. First, the bad news. Unless we can again experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of our recovery. The good news, there is a solution. Now, the big book promises when the spiritual malady is overcome, my mind and body straightens out. So I want you to imagine 3 layers. Now, the first layer is our bodily reaction to mind-altering substances, to alcohol and drugs when we consume them. And that creates that physical craving. I want more. I want to be this way all the time. Now, underneath that physical allergy, there's a second layer, and this is the insanity of the mind just before the first drink or drug, that mental obsession, what I like to call the liar. And underneath that second layer is the third layer, and this is the inward condition. It's our spiritual malady that triggers the liar, that triggers that second layer, the mental obsession, which ultimately, without defense, triggers the first, where I put the drug or alcohol in my body and I'm off on another spree. Now, symptoms of this third layer, symptoms of this spiritual malady are described in our big book. And I'm going to ask 15 short questions. So make a mental note in your mind. Yes, no, yes, no. So the first question is, are you having trouble with personal relationships? Yes or no? 2, not being able to control your emotional nature. 3, are you prey to or suffering from misery or depression? 4, not being able to make a living or a successful life. 5, having feelings of uselessness. 6, being full of fear. 7, unhappy. 8, inability to be of real help to other people. 9, being like the actor who wants to run the whole show. 10, being driven by fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. 11, self-will run riot. 12, leading a double life. 13, living like a tornado running through the lives of others. 14, exhibiting selfish and inconsiderate habits. And 15, being restless, irritable, and discontented. Now, when I'm working with someone who's relapsing, I go through this list. They're usually getting 13, 14, 15 out of 15 yes answers to this diagnosis of the spiritual malady. So ask yourself, am I suffering from a spiritual malady? Particularly if you haven't had a drink or a drug in a while. Currently, what is the condition of your inner life? Are you experiencing any of these 15 symptoms I've just listed? And if so, what can you do about it? So with the chronic relapser, I have 9 questions that I probe to figure out where in their program are they falling short. Now, the first question I ask is, have you ever taken another addict through the steps? And if you have, how long has it been since you've taken another through the steps? And you'd be surprised how many people have never really carried the message to another addict who suffers. 2, was your 4-step inventory thorough? Did you leave anything out? If yes, what was it that you failed to analyze and discuss? 3, have you completed all of your 9th step amends wherever possible? And if not, what remains to be done? 4, is there a wrong relationship in your life that you will not face and make right? And if yes, what is it? Could be a relationship with a person, could be with a job, it could be with a certain activity. You know it's wrong, but you don't want to give it up for whatever reason. But you know it's a wrong relationship in your life. 5, is there a bad habit, indulgence, or character defect you will not give up? And if yes, what is it? For example, you could be, I suffered vulgar language. I really worked on that defect and I don't suffer it anymore. I don't expound on it in the meetings that often. Gossip, philandering, social media, philandering. Another word for that is step 13. Smoking, pornography, bigotry, prejudice. There are certain character defects or indulgences that I might have in my life that I want to hang on to, and they're not conducive to a spiritual program. And I really got to be rigorously honest with myself. Am I working a spiritual program of action, or am I, hanging on to some of the vestiges of my past? 6, is there a person like an ex-spouse, a partner, a friend, an institution like police, church, government, a company, or a principle like socialism, capitalism, wokeism, communism, altruism, lots of issues out there in the world in your life that you will not accept and or forgive? And if so, what is it? 7, is there a restitution you will not make? And if there is, what is it? 8, is there something God has instructed you to do that you will not obey? And if there's a yes to that, what is it? What is it God trying to tell you that you don't want to do? And 9, are you working with the disciplines and practices of step 10 and 11, self-examination, meditation, and prayer consistently every day? No half measures. In conclusion, it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, but we're headed for trouble if we do, because our alcohol and the drugs and these obsessive compulsive behaviors are a subtle foe. Remember, the liar's out to kill us. We're not cured of our addiction. What we do is we put the liar into remission. And what we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts, these spiritual principles, which must go with us constantly. And we can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It's the proper use of the will. I see people say when they relapse, oh, I took my will back. I took my will back. You never lose your willpower. It's a question of motive. Are you using your willpower to live in God's world, being honest, pure, unselfish, and loving, and a maximum service to God and your fellows? Or are you using your willpower to live in that fourth column, to hang on to some of the worst character defects and be selfish and self-centered, snatching all you can get out of the show? And then suffer its symptoms: restless, irritable, discontented, bored, depressed, right? The spiritual life is, the spiritual life is not a theory. We got to live it, right? Our program is into action, faith with works. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Remember, recovery is not a sprint. I meet a lot of sprinters in the program. It's a marathon for life, and I'm for that. How about you? God bless, and we'll see you on the firing lines of recovery, everybody.